Ever notice how some people never seem to lose their keys, miss a deadline, or panic before a meeting, while the rest of us are constantly playing catch-up? It's not luck, and it's not some rare personality gene. It's a handful of small, learnable habits that quietly hold their lives together. In this episode, we're pulling back the curtain on what highly organized people actually do differently, not the picture-perfect, color-coded version you see online, but the real, sometimes messy systems that work. Along the way, you'll pick up advanced English vocabulary, natural idioms, and expressions you can genuinely use in conversation. Stick around by the end, you might just steal a habit or two for yourself.
Yeah, that is a spot-on setup for our mission today. Because, we're essentially going to deconstruct the architecture of calm.
Ooh, I like that phrase, architecture of calm.
Right, because we want to bypass all that highly aesthetic, Instagram-friendly organization you see online all the time.
Yeah, the perfectly arranged pantries.
Yes. The pantries, the color-coded digital calendars, they're fine, but they don't actually tell us anything about how a person operates under pressure, do they?
No, totally.
So instead, we're looking at the underlying psychological mechanics today. The real daily routines that genuinely reduce friction in your everyday life.
And for you listening, I really want to emphasize right up front, this deep dive is not about becoming some sort of robot.
Oh, definitely not.
It's not about achieving this impossible, sterile standard of perfection where you never make a single mistake. It's really about finding that one tiny, almost boring adjustment that could completely change how you experience your week.
Absolutely.
And as promised in our intro,
yeah,
we're going to organically highlight some of those natural English idioms along the way. Like right there at the start, I mentioned playing catch-up.
That's a good one.
Yeah, when you're playing catch-up, it simply means you're always scrambling, right? You're trying to finish work or handle responsibilities that should have been dealt with earlier.
Yeah.
You're just perpetually behind.
Mm-mm.
And then pulling back the curtain is just a vivid way of saying we are revealing the hidden truth about something.
Mm-hmm.
And today, that hidden truth is about how highly organized people actually function behind closed doors.
And, the very first hidden truth we need to reveal is actually a pretty pervasive cultural myth. We kind of need to completely dismantle the whole idea of the naturally organized person.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because there's this persistent, almost romantic belief out there that organization is just a genetic lottery. Like, society tells us that you are either born with this innate instinct to, alphabetize your bookshelf and intuitively manage your time, or you just aren't.
Right. We treat being disorganized like being tall or short.
Yes.
We view it as a fixed biological trait. If you're a disorganized person, you just assume it's baked right into your DNA. But the more we dive into the sources for this deep dive, the more it becomes incredibly clear that this is just a comforting story we tell ourselves, right? To avoid doing the hard work.
It is deeply comforting. And the reason it's so comforting is that it lets us off the hook, which, by the way, is a fantastic idiom for our listeners.
Yeah. Explain that one.
So, if something lets you off the hook, it means it frees you from blame or responsibility. If you can convince yourself that organization is a magical genetic trait you just simply don't possess, well, then you never have to take responsibility for your own chaos.
Right. You just shrug when you lose a vital document and say, oh, well, that's just not who I am.
Exactly, or rather spot on. But when you actually observe genuinely organized people, the ones who quietly and efficiently run their businesses, manage their teams, keep their households afloat without constant drama, you hear a vastly different story. Almost without exception, they built their organization. It wasn't innate, it was forged.
They built it out of pure necessity, usually after surviving a period of total unmanageable disorder. I want to bring up Priya from our research. She's a hospital administrator in Manchester. Today, she manages this massive high-stakes department of 40 people, and her colleagues describe her as possessing this eerie calm. Like, nothing seems to faze her.
Not at all.
But if you rewind the clock to her 20s, she was an absolute wreck. She actually missed a crucial rent payment and faced eviction.
Wow.
And it wasn't even because she didn't have the money. It was because the reminder email got completely buried under 400 unread messages in her chaotic inbox.
Yeah.
She was just drowning in her own lack of systems.
And that distinction is paramount, right? Priya explicitly states that she wasn't a naturally organized person. She was simply a person who got tired of drowning. Organization, for the vast majority of people who possess it, is a direct, calculated response to friction. It's what happens when someone becomes so incredibly frustrated with the very real, very painful costs of their own disorder. The late fees, the damaged reputations, the constant stress, they just finally decide to build something better.
Let's unpack this shift in mindset, because this feels like the foundation of everything else we're going to explore today. We have to stop asking the identity question. Am I an organized person?
Right.
And we need to start asking the design question. What system would actually reduce my friction today?
I love that. When you tie organization to your core identity, it feels fixed, it feels unchangeable. You basically create a self-fulfilling prophecy. But when you reframe your chaos as a design problem, suddenly it becomes solvable.
Totally solvable.
Designs can be tweaked, they can be tested, broken, and improved. Highly organized people, they think like engineers. They aren't relying on some well of innate talent. They're constantly tinkering with their environment. They observe what isn't working, like losing their keys every morning, and they implement a mechanical fix rather than wallowing in self-pity.
I have an analogy for this that completely changed my own perspective when I first heard it. We treat organization like it's eye color, but it's actually much more like knowing how to swim.
Oh, that's good.
Right. You aren't born knowing how to do it. You don't just jump into the deep end of a pool as a toddler and intuitively know the backstroke. You learn how to paddle and kick, specifically, so you don't drown.
Yes.
Priya didn't wake up one morning, stretch, and magically transform into an administrator with an eerie calm. She missed that rent payment, felt the painful, terrifying sting of potential eviction, and engineered a solution. She set up autopay and ruthlessly cleared her inbox. She lost an important medical document once, panicked in front of her boss, and decided to use one consolidated digital folder instead of 3 scattered ones.
And those adjustments, when you look at them in isolation, they are remarkably small. They're almost boring.
Yeah.
Setting up autopay takes, 5 minutes? Creating a single folder takes 10 seconds. But stacked together over a decade, those micro-adjustments produce that eerie calm her colleagues marvel at today. The issue is that the rest of us never get to see the messy middle of that journey. We just look at the polished, highly competent professional she is today and assume she was always that way.
Social media undeniably makes this illusion 1,000 times worse. You scroll through your feed and see one perfectly lit photo of a labeled glass jar pantry, and it tells you absolutely nothing about the years of failed systems, rotting vegetables, and frantic grocery store trips that forced that person to finally buy some jars. It hides all the friction.
Which brings us to the very first, most universal point of friction we all have to manage. If organization is just a skill of managing friction, the single most common point of failure for every human being is our own memory.
This is where the science gets really fascinating, because the assumption is that highly organized people must have, like, steel trap memories, right? You picture them being able to recall every appointment, every birthday, every tiny task with perfect clarity.
Right.
But it turns out the reality is a total opposite. They do not trust their memories at all. They operate under the absolute, unwavering assumption that they are inherently forgetful.
They do. And this behavioral habit actually has a formal name in psychology. It's called cognitive offloading.
Cognitive offloading.
Yeah, and we need to understand how the brain actually works to see why this is so critical. Our working memory is famously painfully limited. The brain is not a hard drive designed for massive data storage. It's a processor. It's designed for analyzing information and making decisions in the present moment. We can really only hold a very small handful of items in our conscious attention at any given time. So every unwritten task, every little promise to yourself that I'll remember to pick up milk later, or I need to email Sarah back tomorrow, takes up a tiny, finite fraction of your mental bandwidth.
It's just like leaving 30 tabs open on your internet browser. The computer's still running, you can still type your document, but everything is just a little bit sluggish. The fan is whirring loudly, the battery is draining rapidly because all that memory is being consumed in the background by tabs you aren't even actively looking at.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. And researchers have actually documented the psychological toll of those open tabs. It's known as the Zeigarnik effect.
The Zeigarnik effect.
Yeah. It describes our brain's built-in biological tendency to continually nag us about unfinished or interrupted tasks. If you leave a task hanging, your brain will keep throwing it back into your conscious awareness, creating a loop. It will keep reminding you, usually at the most inconvenient times, like when you're trying to fall asleep until the task is either completed or, and this is the crucial part, captured somewhere safe and trustworthy.
We learned about Marcus in our research. He's a freelance architect in Toronto, and he's a perfect case study for this. He manages massive, multi-million-dollar building projects with hundreds of moving parts.
Oh, yeah.
And he said something that I immediately wrote down. He said, "My brain is for having ideas, not for storing them."
That's incredibly powerful.
It just hit me like a ton of bricks. He carries around this battered, coffee-stained, frankly, ugly, physical notebook everywhere he goes. Not a slick iPad, not a fancy app, a cheap notebook. And he uses it because flipping open a piece of paper is faster than unlocking a smartphone, finding the app, opening a new note, and typing with your thumbs. The absolute millisecond a thought or a task occurs to him, he externalizes it. He gets it out of his processor and onto the paper.
And what Marcus is doing is profoundly relieving for the human nervous system. This habit of externalizing memory reduces biological anxiety far more than it actually reduces your tangible workload.
Really?
Yeah. When, with absolute unshakable certainty that a task is sitting safely in a trusted external system, your brain finally lets it go. The Zeigarnik effect switches off. You stop mentally whispering, "Don't forget to call the dentist, don't forget to call the dentist," on an endless loop. The result is a profound physical sense of quiet in your mind. Cortisol levels actually drop when you write things down.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little bit, though, because as someone listening right now, you might be thinking, wait, isn't having to write literally everything down exhausting in its own right?
Sure.
If I have to stock what I'm doing 50 times a day to write down, buy dog food or text mom back, it sounds like I'm just adding a massive pile of micro chores to my day. Doesn't the cure become worse than the disease?
It's a completely fair question, and it often feels that way at first glance. But you have to weigh the physical effort of writing a single sentence against the invisible, exhausting, all-day mental drain of not writing it down. The mental bandwidth required to hold on to 10 small tasks for 8 hours is massive. It degrades your decision-making, makes you irritable, and ruins your focus.
Right.
Offloading those tasks to paper takes perhaps 3 seconds per thought, but it gives you back hours of clear, unburdened focus. You are trading 3 seconds of physical friction for a massive return and mental clarity. However, and there is a massive structural caveat here, that external system only provides that mental relief if you actually truly trust it.
Yes. The dreaded graveyard of forgotten intentions. I know that place very well. It's where all my old to-do list apps live.
You're totally right. If you write things down on a beautiful notepad or in a sophisticated app, but your subconscious knows you never actually look at that pad again, your brain knows you're faking it.
Wow.
The Zeigarnik effect will kick right back into high gear, and the anxiety will return because your brain realizes the task isn't truly safe, it was just buried. Marcus mentioned he used an expensive digital task manager for years that he never remembered to open. So typing things into it felt identical to just forgetting them. There was no relief.
So how do you actually build that trust? How do you convince your brain that the notebook isn't a graveyard?
You build it through a behavioral technique called habit stacking. You don't try to rely on willpower to remember to check your list. Instead, you attach the review of your system to something you already do automatically every single day without fail.
Like brushing your teeth.
Spot on. For Marcus, he attached it to his caffeine intake. He reviews his battered notebook every single morning while he drinks his first cup of coffee. He doesn't drink the coffee until the notebook is open. That 5-minute daily ritual is the engine that drives the whole thing. It turns the notebook from a passive graveyard into an active, deeply trusted tool. His brain knows that if something is in the notebook, it will be seen at 7 a.m. the next day.
That makes total sense. So you offloaded your memory, you've written everything down, you're drinking your coffee, and you're feeling that wonderful mental quiet. But then you look down at that trusted list and reality hits you. The list is absolutely packed with tiny, annoying, quick little tasks. Email the accountant, sign the school permission slip, pay the water bill. What happens then?
Yeah.
That brings us to how highly organized people actually execute their day once the list is made.
And this leads us directly into one of the most transformative rules of execution, the 2-minute rule. It is a remarkably simple, almost deceptively basic principle, but incredibly powerful in practice. The rule states, if a task arises and it takes less than 2 minutes to complete, you do not write it down in your trusted system. You just do it immediately.
The logic here is brilliant because it's purely mathematical. By the time you write down reply to Bod's quick question, categorize it, tag it with a priority level, file it in your system, and then review it later that afternoon, you have spent significantly more time and cognitive energy managing the task than it would have taken to just type the 2-line reply and hit send in the first place. You're creating bureaucratic overhead for your own life.
We see this vividly in the story of Elena, an operations manager based in Berlin. Before she adopted the 2-minute rule, she estimated she was carrying around 15 to 20 of these micro tasks in her head at any given moment. Replying to a supplier about a shipping date, updating one single cell in a massive spreadsheet, approving a small expense report. She described the feeling of carrying these unactioned tasks as static, just a constant low-level buzzing noise in her head that made it impossible to think deeply.
I think every single person listening knows exactly what that static feels like. It's maddening. It makes you feel incredibly busy, yet you look back at the end of the day and realize you accomplished absolutely nothing of substance.
That's the reality of it. And clearing those microtasks immediately isn't just about the satisfaction of getting things done. It is fundamentally about protecting your attention. Highly organized people treat their attention not as an endless resource, but as a highly finite, easily depletable battery. Every small, lingering task is a parasitic drain on that battery.
But hold on. There is a huge gaping trap here. Right. Because I know from my own life, clearing out my inbox and knocking out 2-minute tasks feels amazing. It gives you this rush. But I can easily spend 3 hours doing quick 2-minute tasks, responding to Slack messages, organizing my digital folders, and completely ignore the massive, difficult, highly important project I actually need to get done.
Yes.
I have an analogy for this. It's like eating junk food because it's right in front of you on the counter. Clearing an inbox feels like eating potato chips. It's super satisfying in the moment. You get that immediate crunch. The salt hits your tongue. You feel like you're eating. But you are starving for real nutrition by noon. You haven't done any real deep work. You just snacked all morning.
That is the classic easy versus urgent trap, and your junk food analogy hits the nail on the head. Easy tasks are deeply seductive. They trick our brains. Every time you send a quick email, you get a little dopamine hit of productivity. But they are almost always executed at the expense of difficult, complex, promotion-worthy work that requires sustained, painful concentration. Elena fell into this exact trap. She looked incredibly busy. She was the most responsive person in the office. Her inbox was constantly at 0, but a major strategic quarterly report that she needed to finish in order to secure a promotion sat completely untouched for 6 weeks because she was too busy eating potato chips.
So how did she fix it? If the 2-minute rule is so great, but it can also ruin your deep work, how do we use it without drowning in a sea of micro tasks?
Elena solved it by creating a rigid, non-negotiable temporal boundary. She realized she couldn't let the micro tasks dictate her schedule, so she ruthlessly protects the first 90 minutes of her workday. During that time, she touches absolutely no 2-minute tasks. No email, no quick Slack replies, no checking the news. She only works on her single most important, most difficult project, the deep work, the strategic report. Only after that 90-minute block of intense focus is finished and she has secured a major win for the day does she open her inbox and allow herself the satisfaction of clearing the static using the 2-minute rule. The ordering of the day is what makes the system functional. You eat your vegetables first, then you can have the potato chips.
Okay, I love that. So we've talked about managing the internal landscape of the mind through cognitive offloading, and we've talked about managing the flow of tasks through the 2-minute rule and protected deep work.
Yeah.
But what about the physical space around us?
Right, the real world.
Because you can have the best notebook in the world, and you can block off your morning perfectly. But if you can't find your car keys or your kid's backpack is missing, you are still going to have a massive panic attack on Tuesday morning and be late for work.
This is a vital transition. This is where we move from managing our tasks to actively designing our environments. One of the most consistent, robust findings in behavioral science over the last few decades is that willpower is an incredibly fragile, unreliable strategy for long-term success.
It really is.
Genuinely organized people do not wake up every day and try to white-knuckle their way through life, forcing themselves to be disciplined. Instead, they redesign their physical and digital environments so that the best, most organized choice becomes the default automatic choice.
We learned about Daniel, a high school teacher in Sydney with 3 very young, chaotic kids. He had a quote that I think needs to be framed on a wall. He said, "I stopped trying to be the kind of person who remembers everything. Instead, I built a house where forgetting doesn't cost me anything."
That is a profound psychological paradigm shift. Daniel realized that relying on his memory while managing 3 toddlers was a losing battle. So he built what he calls a launch pad. It's a small, physical wooden shelf he installed right by his front door. And the genius of it is in its physical constraints. It only has physical room for exactly 4 items: his wallet, his phone charger, permission slips he needs to sign for his students, and his sunglasses.
And the rule is nothing else is allowed on that shelf. And it's not because Daniel possesses superhuman discipline or because he aggressively polices the shelves. It's because the physical reality of the shelves dictates it. There just isn't room to stack junk mail or old coffee cups there. It honestly sounds a bit like baby-proofing your own house, but for your adult self.
That baby-proofing analogy is incredibly apt. Think about what you do when you baby-proof a house. You put the dangerous things, the toxic chemicals, the fragile glass up high or locked away where they are difficult to access. And you put the safe, desirable things, the soft toys down low where they are easy to grab. You are physically engineering the environment to guide behavior. Daniel is doing the exact same thing for his future stressed out self.
It makes so much sense.
If you want to work out in the morning, leaving your gym clothes buried in the bottom drawer of a dark dresser is adding massive friction. You have to wake up, hunt for them, wake up your partner, make decisions. Putting them right next to your shoes by the door removes all of that friction. You are baby-proofing the workout.
I really want you listening to stop and think about your own physical friction points right now. Where do you stumble every morning? Is it finding your work badge? Is it packing your lunch? How can you baby-proof that specific spot?
What Daniel and these other individuals are doing is designing for their absolute worst moments. This is so vital for people to grasp. Organized people don't build systems for the days they feel fully rested, highly motivated, and emotionally calm.
Yeah, anyone can be organized on a perfect Sunday afternoon.
Exactly. They build systems for the days they are exhausted, running 10 minutes late, nursing a headache, and totally distracted by a crisis. A genuinely good system doesn't require willpower or a good mood. It requires gravity. It requires the physical environment to funnel you toward the right action.
And that concept has to apply digitally too, right? Because our digital environments are often vastly more cluttered than our physical ones.
Absolutely. The digital equivalent of a cluttered, messy hallway filled with trick hazards is a smartphone with all the default notifications left turned on. Highly organized people are notoriously ruthless about their digital environments. They don't rely on the willpower to ignore a buzz or a beep. They turn off every single ping, buzz, vibration, and banner that isn't a genuine immediate emergency. They understand fundamentally that a digital interruption fragments your cognitive attention just as violently as physically tripping over a pile of shoes fragments your physical momentum.
But this gets deeply complicated when you aren't the only person living in that environment. Solitary systems are great. If you live alone, you can put your launch pad wherever you want. But most of us share spaces with partners, roommates, children, or colleagues.
Which is why a perfectly engineered personal system will completely shatter if it intersects with a shared reality that hasn't bought into it. We saw this with Sophia, a nurse practitioner living in a busy household. She realized that implementing a brilliant new organizational tool like a shared family calendar or a new filing system for the mail meant absolutely nothing if she didn't have an explicit conversation with her partner first.
Oh, communication.
Yes. They had to collectively agree on where shared items would live and what the rules were. The system only survives if everyone operating within that environment respects its boundaries. You can't baby-proof a house if your partner keeps leaving the safety gates open.
Okay, so let's summarize where we are. You've offloaded your memory into a trusted notebook. You're clearing out those buzzing microtasks with the 2-minute rule after your deep work. And you've successfully baby-proofed your physical and digital environment. Everything is running smoothly. But here's the harsh truth. Even a perfect system won't stay perfect on its own. Entropy always wins in the universe. Things naturally, inevitably move from order to disorder unless you actively put energy in to fight back.
And the mechanism highly organized people use to fight back against entropy is the weekly reset. This stems from the realization that organization is not a one-time achievement. You can't just spend a frantic Saturday buying matching bins at a container store, label everything, and expect your life to stay magically organized forever. It requires ongoing, deliberate maintenance.
Sophia, the nurse practitioner from Chicago we just mentioned, is a great example of this. She doesn't spend her weekends doing massive, exhausting overhauls of her life. Instead, she has a strict 20-minute ritual every single Sunday evening. And it's not a deep clean, it's a quick, predictable checkpoint.
During those 20 minutes, she performs a very specific routine. She looks back at the past week, reviews the tasks in her system that didn't get done, and asks herself a brutally honest question. Does this task actually still matter? Is it moving my life forward? And if the answer is no, she just deletes it. She crosses it out.
I think this is a huge aha moment for a lot of people, including myself. I always used to think that being organized meant you had to do absolutely everything you ever wrote down on your list. like it was some sort of moral failing if a task didn't get checked off. I would carry guilt over an uncompleted task for months. But you're saying it's actually about being decisive enough to throw half the list in the trash without a shred of guilt.
That is a core secret of the highly organized. They are remarkably comfortable discarding things that no longer serve a purpose. A to-do list is not a binding legal contract. It is a tool for navigating the present. But the weekly reset also serves a much deeper emotional function. It is a structured opportunity for the nervous system to exhale.
Oh, that makes sense.
By gathering all the scattered thoughts, loose papers, unread emails, and lingering obligations into one central place once a week, you prevent them from drifting around in the background and generating subconscious anxiety. You close the open loops.
It also acts as an early warning radar system, right?
Yeah.
Like looking out over the horizon.
Yes. Specifically, it functions as a diagnostic tool. Sophia uses her Sunday reset to spot scheduling collisions before they ever happen. If she looks at her upcoming week on Sunday night and sees that she has 5 major deadlines, a parent-teacher conference, and a dentist appointment all overlapping on Wednesday, she can take action immediately.
She can fix it.
Right. She can renegotiate a deadline on Monday, delegate a task to a colleague, or reschedule the dentist. She is steering the ship around the iceberg on Sunday evening rather than crashing violently into it on Wednesday morning when it's way too late to pivot.
That idea of proactively throwing tasks in the trash and canceling things leads us directly into what might be the most difficult and undoubtedly the most vital organizational superpower of all. We have to talk about boundaries.
The ability to say no.
This is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
Because you can have the most beautiful, color-coded, efficiently designed system in the world, but no system can absorb unlimited commitments. It will break.
It is a mathematical impossibility. Time is finite. And yet so many of us try to defy that math every single day. We explored the story of Rahim in our deep dive. He's a high-level marketing director based in Dubai, and he was the classic ultimate yes man. He agreed to every meeting invite. He took on every favor his colleagues asked for. He jumped on every quick call. He noted that if you looked at his calendar, it was a work of art. It looked incredibly impressive and packed.
Sure.
But his actual tangible output, the strategic work he was hired to do, was terrible. He was failing at his job while working 14 hours a day.
For a people pleaser, saying no feels like dropping a bomb. Let's explain that idiom real quick for our listeners. Dropping a bomb means delivering shocking, highly upsetting, or disruptive news. When you are deeply conditioned to accommodate everyone around you, looking a colleague in the eye and saying, "I can't do this," feels incredibly dangerous to the relationship. You feel like you're letting them down.
Right.
But Rahim had this brilliant realization that changed his life. He realized he didn't have a time management problem. He had a decision-making problem. Every single time you say yes to someone else's request, you are simultaneously making a silent decision against your own priorities. You are giving away your limited bandwidth.
The psychological danger of saying yes is that it feels completely costless in the present moment. Agreeing on a Tuesday to grab a 30-minute coffee next Thursday doesn't hurt today. You get the social reward of being agreeable without any immediate pain. But the damage is invisible, and it is highly cumulative. Rahim finally saw the reality of his choices when he printed out his calendar, added up all his commitments for one single week, and realized there literally were not enough physical hours in the day to accomplish them, regardless of how fast or efficiently he worked. A perfectly color-coded calendar that is jammed full of useless meetings and other people's priorities is still, fundamentally, a wildly disorganized life.
So how do we actually do it? How do we say no without alienating our bosses, frustrating our partners, and ruining the relationships we care about?
Rahim developed a highly effective communication strategy we can refer to as the soft no. Instead of delivering a blunt, cold refusal, which triggers defensiveness, he uses a 3-step formula. First, he briefly and warmly acknowledges the request, validating the other person's need. Second, he explains honestly that taking on the task doesn't align with his top 3 current priorities or his available bandwidth for the week. He makes it about his capacity, not their request. And third, he always offers an alternative solution. He might suggest another colleague who has the specific expertise and bandwidth, or he might offer a firm date a month in the future when his major project wraps up. This strategy preserves the social relationship while rigorously protecting the integrity of his system.
This shift, treating our own time as a highly valuable resource worthy of fierce protection, requires a fundamental shift in how we treat ourselves. especially when things go wrong, which they inevitably will.
Which brings us to the absolutely critical role of self-kindness in the architecture of calm. And I know the term self-kindness sounds like a very soft, therapeutic concept in a gritty discussion about productivity and systems, but the research shows it is actually the bedrock of long-term consistency.
Genuinely organized people categorically reject perfectionism. Perfectionist organization is incredibly brittle. It's like glass. It looks beautiful, but it shatters into a million pieces the minute you have a bad week.
It shatters because it has zero slack built into its design. If your organizational system requires you to operate at 100% capacity with 100% focus and 100% motivation all day, every day, it is guaranteed to fail. It will fail the moment your kid wakes up with a fever, or your flight gets delayed by 4 hours, or you just wake up on a Tuesday feeling vaguely unmotivated and sad. Genuinely organized people expect bad days. They assume chaos will strike. Therefore, they design their systems to absorb disruptions gracefully, with buffers and margin built in.
Priya, our hospital administrator from the beginning of the show, had a massive transformation in this specific area. Her journey wasn't just about setting up autopay for her rent. It was fundamentally about changing the literal tone of her internal monologue.
Years ago, in her 20s, if Priya found an unpaid bill under a stack of mail, she would immediately spiral into deep shame. She would ruthlessly berate herself. She would tell herself she was careless, a failure at adulthood, fundamentally broken. Shame is a remarkably common emotional response to disorganization. We internalize the mess.
Well, they really do.
But from a behavioral psychology standpoint, shame is a terrible, highly toxic long-term motivator. It might provoke a short, frantic, adrenaline-fueled burst of cleaning up your desk at midnight, but it inevitably leads to exhaustion, avoidance, and total burnout. You can't hate yourself into being organized.
I want you to really reflect on your own life right now. How often do you misplace your keys or forget to send an email, and your immediate knee-jerk internal thought is, God, I'm such a mess, I'm an idiot. We literally use our disorganization as a weapon to beat ourselves up. But Priya stopped treating her organizational mistakes as deep character flaws. She started viewing them entirely neutrally, as data. It's like a scientist observing an outcome. Oh, the experiment failed. The bill didn't get paid. Interesting. Why did that happen? Was the mail left on the wrong counter? Let's tweak the formula and try again.
That profound shift from toxic shame to objective curiosity is exactly what makes a system sustainable over a lifetime. Curiosity allows you to look at a breakdown in your life, extract a genuinely useful mechanical lesson from it, and make a small practical adjustment without abandoning the entire effort in a fit of despair. Ultimately, building a robust organizational system isn't about impressing other people or looking like a CEO. It is an act of profound care for your future self. The version of you that wakes up next Tuesday morning will be incredibly deeply grateful that today's version of you took 90 seconds to write down that doctor's appointment and put your keys on the launch pad.
Despite knowing all of this, despite understanding the power of cognitive offloading, the efficiency of the 2-minute rule, the necessity of environmental design, the relief of weekly resets, the boundaries of saying no, and the grace of self-kindness, we still manage to fall into the exact same traps over and over again when we try to get our lives together. So let's do an anatomy of failure. Let's break down the most common mistakes people make when they try to get organized.
Understanding these failure points is vital because they all share one fatal common theme. They inadvertently add friction to your life instead of removing it. And the most prevalent, ubiquitous mistake we see is a behavior we call system hopping.
Oh, this is so common. I've been so guilty of this. System hopping is when you download a shiny, brand new productivity app on a Friday night, spend the entire weekend meticulously customizing the colors, setting up complex tags, and watching tutorials, and then you completely abandon it 3 weeks later the moment a newer, sleeker app hits the market.
Oh, absolutely.
I have a great analogy for this. It's like deciding you want to learn a new language, so you start learning French. But 3 weeks in, you're frustrated because you aren't fluent yet, so you switch to Spanish. And a month later, you switch to Japanese. You will perpetually be learning how to say hello and where's the bathroom, and you will never, ever get past the basics to actually have a meaningful conversation.
That is a phenomenal analogy. Every single time you switch systems, you reset the clock on your neurological habit formation back to absolute zero. You force your brain to learn a new interface, new rules, and new physical motions. Marcus, the architect with the battered notebook, admitted he had tried a dozen expensive, sophisticated apps in the past, but the simple paper notebook finally worked for him because he made a conscious choice to stop looking for something better. He accepted its flaws and allowed the habit of using it to solidify into an automatic reflex.
What's another major trap people fall into?
Over-engineering. This happens constantly, especially with highly analytical, intelligent people. They try to account for every possible variable, so they build incredibly complex Byzantine systems with nested folders, subtasks, and elaborate color-coding hierarchies. Elena, the operations manager in Berlin, confessed that she had 15 different categories for her tasks at one point.
Just managing the categories sounds like a full-time job.
Yeah.
That sounds exhausting.
It is exhausting. Because every single time a new tiny task arrives in her inbox, she is forcing her brain to make a complex decision. Which of these 15 distinct categories does this specific task belong in? That tiny bit of decision-making friction, multiplied by 50 or 100 tasks a day, becomes cognitively overwhelming. The system itself becomes a massive source of stress and resistance. Elena eventually realized her system was choking her, so she stripped it down to just 3 hyper-simple categories: tasks for today, tasks for this week, and tasks for someday. Simplicity is the ultimate key to longevity.
We also briefly touched on the massive mistake of solitary systems earlier, trying to architect your perfect life in a vacuum, completely ignoring the reality of the people who share your physical and digital space. If your system requires your partner to read your mind, it's a bad system. And then, of course, there is the trap of prioritizing aesthetics over function.
Yes, confusing how a system looks on the surface with how it actually works under pressure. A pristine, pastel-colored, beautifully bound leather planner might look stunning on an office desk, but if you're subconsciously afraid to cross things out, scribble notes in the margins, or make a mess in it because you want to keep it looking perfect, it is no longer a functional tool. It's an art piece. Marcus's battered, coffee-stained notebook is highly dynamically functional, precisely, or rather specifically, because it is ugly and forgiving. Reliability always trumps beauty when it comes to getting things done.
And the final trap, which I think catches almost everyone who sets a New Year's resolution, is motivation dependence.
This might be the most insidious trap of all. People build highly demanding routines and systems that require a high baseline of physical energy and emotional inspiration to maintain. For the first 2 weeks of January, the system works perfectly because motivation naturally runs high. You feel inspired. But the real, brutal test of any system is an unremarkable, rainy, low-energy Tuesday in February. If your system completely collapses on that low-energy Tuesday, it means it was built entirely on the fragile foundation of motivation rather than the solid bedrock of habit, environmental design, and low friction.
So let's look at the big picture. If we actually manage to do the hard work, if we avoid all these traps, if we stop system hopping, if we simplify our complex categories, involve our partners in our plans, prioritize ugly function over pretty aesthetics, and build systems that survive our lowest energy days, what is the actual reward at the end of the tunnel? Is the ultimate return on investment really just getting more work done for our bosses? Does all this effort actually make people happier?
The consistent finding across all the interviews and case studies was absolutely fascinating. When these highly organized individuals were asked about the primary emotional payoff of their systems, almost no one cited feeling productive. They didn't brag about their output. The primary emotional return on investment was feeling calm or feeling physically lighter.
It goes right back to reducing that background cost of living we talked about. The constant, draining, low-level hum of unmade decisions, misplaced items, and lingering obligations.
Unmade decisions are physically heavy. They weigh on the psyche. When you externalize those decisions, when you build automatic routines around them so you don't have to think about them anymore, that weight lifts. But there is also a profound, often overlooked relational dimension to this entire process. Being organized builds massive amounts of interpersonal trust.
I love this point so much, and I want to highlight it for the listener. We so often tend to think of organization as me time. I need to organize my life so I can achieve my goals. But it's actually we time. It impacts everyone around you. Rahim noted that his colleagues and his team trusted him significantly more once he started saying no to them. It seems counterintuitive, but because he stopped overpromising, when he finally did look them in the eye and say yes to a project, they knew with absolute certainty he actually meant it. He became a rock of reliability.
It changes everything.
Sophia noticed a massive, palpable drop in ambient household resentment between her and her partner, simply because the logistics of their shared life were clear, visible, and shared equally. Being reliable, showing up on time, and doing what you said you would do is a profound form of deep respect for the people you share your life with.
It is a form of respect, but we must set proper, realistic expectations for anyone starting this journey. This is a story of slow, almost imperceptible compounding. These habits do not change your life overnight in a flash of lightning, Priya's transformation from missing rent to exhibiting an eerie calm took years of small adjustments. Alina's elegantly simplified three-category system emerged slowly from the frustrating ashes of several failed, over-engineered ones.
So if you listen to this deep dive, and you go try setting up a launch pad by your front door this evening, and your life isn't magically completely transformed by Friday morning, it doesn't mean the habit is broken. It doesn't mean you failed. It just means it's a habit. They build their power invisibly over time.
That is the reality of the process. The goal isn't immediate flawless perfection. The goal is resilience. A truly robust system is one that bends but doesn't break. It fails gracefully when you have a terrible, chaotic week, and it recovers quickly and easily the following Monday morning without requiring a massive burst of willpower.
As we synthesize everything we've talked about in this extensive deep dive, it becomes glaringly obvious that when it comes to organization, one size truly never fits all.
Let's just briefly review the incredible diversity of the tools we've seen working for different people. Marcus relies on a battered, cheap paper notebook. Elena uses a highly minimal digital app with just 3 categories. Daniel built a physical wooden shelf by his door. Sophia leans on a 20-minute Sunday time ritual. Raheem's biggest breakthrough wasn't a tool at all, it was simply setting verbal boundaries. 6 different people living 6 entirely different lives, requiring 6 entirely different solutions.
If you tried to aggressively copy Marcus's paper notebook system and force it into Sophia's life as a highly mobile nurse practitioner with 2 young kids, it would probably be a total disaster. She might leave the notebook at the clinic.
It would fail instantly. And this perfectly explains why you can read 2 best-selling books by famous organization experts, and one will command you to digitize every single piece of paper in your life, while the other will passionately argue that you must use a physical, leather-bound paper planner. This contradictory advice isn't proof that the experts are frauds or that the field is nonsense. It is proof that context is absolutely everything.
You shouldn't be looking at influencers and asking, what exact system do highly organized people use? You should be looking at your own life and asking, where do I personally keep stubbing my toe every single day? And what is the cheapest, easiest, most boring way to pad that specific corner?
That is the perfect foundational operating philosophy. It is entirely about identifying your own personal, specific points of friction and making the absolute smallest, most boring, lowest effort adjustment to fix them.
So to bring this all together for you listening right now, highly organized people are not magical unicorns. They are not genetically superior to you. They simply utilize a handful of reliable tools to manage friction. They aggressively externalize their memory to stop their brains from nagging them with the Zeigarnik effect. They ruthlessly clear out tiny microtasks to protect their finite attention for deep focus. They design their physical and digital environments so that good habits become automatic, default choices. They perform quick, forgiving weekly maintenance rituals to fight entropy, and they are brave enough to say no to protect their bandwidth. And driving all of this, the engine underneath it all, is a spirit of self-kindness, treating their inevitable mistakes as useful data rather than devastating proof of their own inadequacy.
We have spent this entire time talking about organization as a mechanical way to manage your heavy workload and streamline your busy life. But I want you to consider this final thought. What if the ultimate goal of getting deeply organized isn't just to clear out space so you can cram more work into your day? What if the true ultimate prize of building these reliable systems is earning the absolute, unshakable freedom to occasionally do nothing at all, and for the very first time in your life to sit on the couch and do it without a single shred of guilt?
What an incredible provocative thought to leave on. True freedom from the static.
Yeah.
So my challenge to you is this: what is the one unglamorous, boring first step you can take today to eliminate your biggest recurring friction point? This Zip Deep Dive helped you find a little more calm today. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. We'll see you next time.